This video is the next video in the algebra set of videos, and in this video we're going to look at solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. If a quadratic equation or a quadratic expression that's in the form ax squared plus bx plus c can't be factorized, the equation can be solved by using the quadratic formula, which you can see here. It says that the roots of a quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c, are x equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, to solve a quadratic equation using the minus b formula, we follow the method which I have below here. It's important to write the equation in the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. You need the x squared, the x, and the numbers all to be on the same side. You need to label a, b, and c and include any signs in front of the numbers. A is the number in front of x squared, b is the number in front of x, and c is the constant. And it's really important to note that if there's no number in front of x squared or x, it's 1. As I'm sure you've seen before, sometimes when we have 1x, mathematicians get a little bit lazy and just write x. Similarly, we could have minus 1x squared, and mathematicians could get a little bit lazy and rewrite this as minus x squared. However, there is a 1 in front of it if it's an x or an x squared with no other number in front of it. It's also really important that you take the sign as well. So if there's a minus, you write down the minus. It's important that you label a, b, and c every single time. This just makes sure that you're not going to make silly mistakes or get the a and the b or the c mixed up at all. It's also important that you write down the minus b formula. We do this, again, just to ensure that you're not going to make simple mistakes and that you fill the equation out correctly. Next, what you'll do is you'll fill in the minus b formulas with the values a, b, and c using brackets every time. Step 5, you type the right side of the minus b formula into the calculator once with a positive sign and once with a negative sign. And then you write your answers or answer from the calculator as x equal to whatever it might be. The best way to go through this is by doing a few examples. Example 2.3 here says solve the equation x squared minus 6x plus 4 is equal to 0, correct to 2 decimal places. Here, first thing I do is I write down the quadratic equation that I have to solve, and that is x squared minus 6x plus 4 is equal to 0. Underneath that, I write the generalized form for a quadratic equation, which is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. This makes identifying a, b, and c a little bit easier. A is the number in front of x. Here we have x squared. However, as it's x squared, there is a 1 in front of it, so a is equal to 1. B is the number in front of x, and here we have minus 6, ensuring that you write the minus as well. And c is 4, the number by itself. Next, I write down the minus b formula, which you can get from your formula and tables booklet. Again, it's on the cover of your formula and tables booklet, so you don't even need to look any further in the actual book. So we have x is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Next, we start to fill it in. We have minus, and then I have my bracket here as I'm going to place in minus 6 for b. Plus or minus the square root, again using my brackets as it's minus 6 squared, not just the 6 squared, but the minus has to be squared as well, minus 4 times 1 times 4. That's all over 2 times 1. After that, we can simplify it down bit by bit, or you could type it all into the calculator at the same time. What I mean by that is you could type x equal to minus 6 plus or minus the square root of minus 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4 all over 2 times 1 into your calculator. And you will get x is equal to 5.24 and x is equal to 0.76. However, what you can do is you can simplify it bit by bit here. However, I don't do this as it just leaves me open to the possibility of making more mistakes. In example 2.4, it says use the quadratic formula to find the roots of the equation 3x squared plus 4x minus 7. As I would in every single question, I'm going to start by writing out the quadratic myself. So I have 3x squared plus 4x minus 7, and that's equal to 0. Underneath that, I'm going to write the general form of a quadratic equation, which is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. And now I'm going to label my a, b, and c. Here, a is equal to 3, b b is equal to 4 and c is equal to minus 7, making sure to bring the negative sign with it. Then I'm going to write down the minus b formula, which you can get on the front of your formula and tables booklet. X is going to be equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and that's all over 2a. Filling the minus b formula in then, I'll get x is equal to minus 4 plus or minus the square root, and now putting it in brackets, I get 4 squared minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is minus 7. And that's all over 2 times a, and a here is 3. Next, I'm going to type that into my calculator. I'm going to use the positive one time and the negative the other time. What you should do now is pause the video, figure out what the answer is, and then check to see if it's the same as mine. For the positive, I get x is equal to 1, and for the negative, I get x is equal to minus 2.3333 recurring. As it's recurring, and as in the question it says correct to 3 decimal places, I'm going to go minus 2.333. If you're not getting the same answers as me, i.e. x equal to 1 or x equal to minus 2.333, or you're getting an error on your calculator, there's a few tricks and tips to help make sure that you're typing it into the calculator correctly. Firstly, a really easy thing to do is to press the fraction button first and then enter everything into the calculator. This ensures that every part of the numerator is on top of the fraction and not to the side of the fraction. Another thing is just to make sure that the square root is over every part, so the 4 squared, the minus 4 times 3 times minus 7, and also just to make sure that you have your signs correct. So for example, this here is a negative 4, we have a minus 4, and then negative 7 here, so just ensuring that the signs are correct. Usually on your calculator as well, if you've entered it and it gives you a syntax error or it tells you that it's not possible to get that answer, if you press the back button, it'll bring you straight to the place where the issue is. If you do have any other issues with this, you just have to ask me or your teacher, and they'll be able to help you really simply and easily. The last example I'll do in this video is example 2.5. Example 2.5 says use the quadratic formula to find the roots of the equation 5x squared plus 7x minus 3 is equal to 0, correct to 2 decimal places. Again, the first thing I'm going to do is just write out the quadratic equation. We have 5x squared plus 7x minus 3 is equal to 0. Underneath that, I'm going to write the general equation for quadratic equation, and that is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Here, I'm going to label my a, b, and c. My a is going to be 5, my b is going to be 7, and my c is going to be minus 3. Again, making sure that you include the sign every single time. Next, I'm going to write down my quadratic formula. The quadratic formula can be got from the front of the formula and tables booklet, and we get x is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and that's all over 2a. Next, I'm going to fill in the formula, so I get x is equal to minus 7 plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 7, again popping it in a bracket. This is especially important if you have a negative number for b, because if you get 7 squared, for example, that gives you 49, but if you have minus 7 squared, that also gives you 49. But if you don't put the minus 7 in a bracket, the square will only square the 7 and you'll be left with minus 49, which isn't correct. So it's important to always have the bracket involved too. Next, then we'll have minus 4 times a, which is 5, times c, which is minus 3. That's then all over 2 times a, and a is 5. Next, all you have to do is type this into the calculator. Again, ensuring that you press the fraction button first, ensuring that you include all of the signs, as in we have a negative here, a positive or negative here, depending on which side. We have a minus 4 here and a negative 3 there. We have a plus side and a minus side. What you should do now is you should pause the video, type it in, and see if your answers match up with mine. Having the positive sign, I get that x is equal to 0.344, and when x is negative, I get an answer of x equal to minus 1.744. In this question, it wants x corrected 2 decimal places. Therefore, we get that x is equal to 0.34 and x is equal to minus 1.74. What we've done now is we've found the values for x for where this quadratic crosses the x-axis. Remember, where the quadratic crosses the x-axis is known as the roots. And if we were to draw what this looks like, we have that x crosses at 0.34 and minus 1.74. And we can just say that these values are here. And then we also have that this is a U-shaped graph, as the 5 here is positive. So roughly speaking, the shape of this quadratic would be something like this. However, we don't have the minimum point, so we don't know how far this is going to travel up or down the y-axis. This will be covered in functions in more detail, but just so you understand exactly what you're doing when you're using the quadratic formula, you're figuring out the roots or where the graph crosses the x-axis. That brings this video to a close, which is all about using the quadratic formula to solve a quadratic equation.